So at the end of our podcast, what we do is we do a thing called unhelpful advice.
Great.
So we have people email us, and they ask us questions, and we try to answer them for them.
I love
and
it.
they don't. It doesn't have to be helpful.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
not,
it shouldn't be, right?
We're not. It can be sometimes
Okay,
if they're
alright.
suicidal and
Oh,
whatnot.
yeah.
You don't want anyone to
A little
die.
curveball right there. Oh, yeah. I sat up straight. Because, yeah, okay. Here comes the email.
Unhelpful Advice with Bobby Kalila and Rory Scovel.
Would you like a serious one or a lighter one?
Interesting.
Let's go serious.
Let's go
I
serious.
was going to say the opposite. Okay.
Let's go serious first.
My question is about your creative process in dealing with rejection. I'm a fiction writer that has yet to be published in a real fiction magazine. I'm also an addict. Back in college for a couple of years, I wrote stories frequently and productively that were generally well received, which turned out to bolster my confidence and creativity. 2 years after graduation, when I started receiving rejection after rejection after rejection by publishers, I began to lose confidence and became hypercritical of my work. Like you, Bobby, I've always overanalyzed situations and crucified myself internally. I've reached to the point where I can't even write a paragraph without a voice in the back of my head criticizing every word. I know that opiates are demons and they aren't making me better as a writer whatsoever. Yet I don't know how to regain my swagger and write about without overanalyzing my work. My question is, as an artist who is also far too critical of your own work and an addict, how do you shut up the thoughts and doubt in your head?
Oh, my God. It's like you talking about the meditation answered this question. Chicken or the egg? That's what just happened right now.
My honest answer is just you can't live in the results, number one. You know, a lot of times I do things and I go, what is it going to get me? Why isn't this not happening? You know what I mean? It's just like you
100%.
just do the fucking work.
Well, exactly what you said earlier about the bands like the Velvet Underground making music because that's what they wanted to make.
Yes.
Not because they were looking for an end game.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Velvet Underground's first album, the Banana one with the Andy Warhol one, sold 500 copies. And but there's a legend and a rumor saying that the 500 copies that they sold, everyone that bought that album started a band.
Yeah.
Right. So they didn't have financial success based on now it obviously it's over the years has made money, but you know, that album influenced a lot of people. But you know, in New York back then, back in the factory days, they probably didn't no one probably even mentioned it. Right.
Right.
They probably thought it was like a failure, maybe.
Sure.
You know, so it's like, for me, it's like, you know, when Rory and I first started doing stand up, we
were best friends.
We were besties, man.
We were absolute besties. And then Bobby goes, promise me this. For a super long time, we'll pretend like we don't know each other. And then I'll have you on my podcast. And I go, what is a podcast? And he goes, even I don't know yet. Even I don't know.
Yeah. But you remember back then doing it is like you didn't, you know, you would sign up. Sometimes you would go late, no
Yes.
audience,
Yes.
right? And you did that night after night. And I honestly swear to God, back then, I would do shows and think to myself, I'm probably never going to make it. I can't
Of course.
see. I don't know how to get an aid. I don't know anything about it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There's no one in the audience. They're giving me 3 minutes. But you know what? I did it because by performing, it gave me like a little adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
And it also was the first thing where I did that was brave.
Yeah.
Because I was such a coward growing up and just kind of scared and shy, and I was proud of myself that every night I could just go up there and make a fool of myself, and that alone, I could have just done that for the rest of my life, but fortunately, I created a career off of it. You know,
Right. To sort of like go off of that answer, that first like 3 years is probably the best it ever is, and you don't know it. You don't know it at the time how good it is, but also it's because you're not clouded by fame or fortune, because no part of you has any concept that will ever happen. And not that you want it to happen, but you don't even think that that's like a thing. You just are like, oh, I discovered the sort of underground world of comics going on stage in these places. But also it probably felt so good because ultimately that was probably your first introduction of who you are and ultimately will become. Whereas you were like perceiving yourself to be this person, Then you did this thing, and it was almost like you were saying to yourself, "Oh, there I am. That's what I do.
Oh my
This
God,
is
you're-
what I
you-
do."
You literally I almost MJ'd it right now, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You almost-
Because think about how you got good at it. Like if that wasn't who you were and what just your thing, you wouldn't be sitting here. You wouldn't have gotten this far. You know, I think we both know that you can't really in stand up. I don't think you can really fake it. You know what I mean? Like there are like when people are like, "Oh, that person steals jokes." Most comics are like, "Well, I hope they don't steal my jokes," but you're not going to get very far doing that. Like there was a time when you were offended and you wanted to kill them.
Right.
Then there was a time when you were like, "Oh, you will either learn to not do." I mean, your first time going on stage, you need a joke. You stole a joke, and think how quickly you were like, "Oh, that wasn't the right thing. I got to clean up this mess
of
that I
course.
did."
No, yeah.
But there's some people who go, "Well, no, it's working, so I'll just keep doing it." And you go, "Oh, you don't even understand what the pure thing of it is because you're not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
Not only
It's not
that,
for you."
it's like in the beginning, I thought that jokes was gonna. It's not the jokes.
I know.
Me being authentically myself.
It's you.
Yeah. What
No
you're
one is
saying.
paying for the jokes.
Exactly.
They don't care about the jokes.
I can really relate to this person because I think that not being an addict, but somebody who has had a lot of like abuse in my life, abuse turns into perfectionism. So for me, I had to reframe the idea of rejection or abuse and not take it as not render me paralyzed, basically. So if there's a way for you to sort of reframe that rejection and not really see it as a rejection rather than like, okay, this is just all part of the process. Because what happens with me is that I never fully follow through with a lot of things in my life because, you know, I was beat constantly by my mom for the tiniest thing, for the tiniest error. And I don't know if that's a part of his history, but when I go to therapy, that's something that I constantly struggle with is to be able to take a negative and not have it feel like an attack
Yeah.
to my being.
Yeah.
So to kind of change it so that it lands a little softer on me so that it feels like fuel rather than a reason to go hide in a hole somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
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 I think that the rejection thing, I don't think there is this world where that ends.
Exactly.
I don't think it ends. I think you write what's good, and like you said, you can't worry about the results. I think that's a great point. I right now am sitting in an abyss of rejection where I've made this documentary and I don't know if anyone's going to buy it, and I actually think it's very good. I've made this TV show that I don't know if anyone will ever see it, and I actually think it's pretty good. For my first stab at like doing a TV show, I've written this other thing, and all these things are 3+ years, 2 to 3 years of like putting these things together and making them. I've written this other thing that I think would be so fun as like a comedy special, and no one is biting on it, but saying this is a good script.
Yeah.
And I'm in this point of going, well, what do I do if I create stuff? Like, why would I create it if I can't push it past
Right.
the next thing? And so I am myself similar, and I also wrote this letter under a pseudonym.
James Scoville? Is that you?
Hi. Anyway.
You're so right, though, because let's suppose publishers did bite what he's written.
Yes.
The rejection doesn't end there. You could be rejected by the public. You could be rejected by critics. You could be rejected. The whole
Yeah.
way through till the very end is one giant rejection.